Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's JPR, and welcome back to another video. The EXP Share, an item that was commonly known for just leveling up your Magikarp, has now somehow become possibly the most controversial item in Pokemon history, as many things in Pokemon tend to do. So, how did we get to this point, and more importantly, is there anything that can be done about it? Let's talk about it. But before that, a word from the sponsors of today's video, Sakura Co. and Tokyo Treat. These are two different snack boxes that you can order straight from Japan to your front door, filled with nothing but the best Japanese snacks out there. And in case you're wondering, okay, what's the difference? Well, Tokyo Treat focuses more on new, hip, exclusive Japanese snacks, while Sakura Co. focuses more on traditional Japanese food. Both of these boxes start out with these little booklets telling you all about the various treats inside, their inspirations, their ingredients, and even a little bit of some fun Japanese stories and trivias as well. And wow, look at this, the Sakura Co. box even comes with its own little Japanese tableware and tea. They thought of everything. It's a very authentic Japanese experience. As for me, I'm going straight for the Pocky because I see this in anime all the time and I've never actually had it before, so let's see how it is. That's really good. I can see why they put that in like every anime ever. Don't mind me, I'm just gonna finish this before I keep recording. Every month has a different theme, and this month the theme for Tokyo Treat is Summer Matsuri, and Sakura Co.'s is Tea Time in Yokohama. If you'd like to try these delicious premium snacks for yourself, then be sure to use the code JPR for $5 off of your first order. Whether it's the Sakura Co. box or the Tokyo Treat box, be sure to use my custom links in the description down below. Thank you Sakura Co. and Tokyo Treat for sponsoring. I'm very much looking forward to next month, and let's get back to the video. The EXP Shares function, as most people remember it between Gen 2 and Gen 5, was to evenly divide EXP among one Pokemon holding the item and the other Pokemon who participated in battle. Basically, if you had a Pokemon in the back of the team holding the item, it would obtain 50% of the EXP, while the one Pokemon you used obtained the other 50%. If you use multiple Pokemon, then the EXP would be further divided among those Pokemon. But the holder of the item always receives 50%, making for a grand total of 100% no matter what. In Gen 6, the EXP Share became a key item and its function was somewhat reverted to how it worked in Gen 1, where it was known as the EXP All. In Gen 1, if the EXP All was in the bag, then all the Pokemon's EXP would be evenly divided. If you had 6 Pokemon in your party, then they would all receive 16.6% of the EXP1, regardless of the circumstances. Once again, equaling a grand total of 100%. To turn the EXP all off, all you'd have to do was deposit it in the PC. Wow, I just realized that's a feature that most kids today will probably never know about. And I'm not gonna be a boomer and say, back in my day, you had to properly manage your items by putting them in the PC. Like, no, Grandpa, having a limit on the amount of items you carried sucked. Give me the magic Harry Potter bag that I can stuff 999 lagging tails into any day. Anyway, Gen 6's EXP Share is somewhat similar to the classic EXP All, except it has a switch allowing it to be turned on or off at any time. The massive difference between the two, though, is the way the EXP is divided up. This time, any Pokemon that participates in the battle receives 100% of the EXP earned, and the rest of the party receives 50%, meaning that your team can earn anywhere from 250% to 500% extra EXP, depending on how many Pokemon you used in battle. Even without EXP Share turned on, starting in this gen, any Pokemon that participated in battle will receive 100% of the EXP instead of it being divided, making switching multiple times in battle extremely effective when it comes to gaining levels. And starting in mid-Gen 7 with Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, and persisting into the present day, the EXP Share is no longer an item at all. Instead, its effects are baked into the EXP system itself, and it cannot be turned off under any circumstances. So that's the history of the EXP Share, but there's another important component missing to this conversation, that being the EXP system itself. In Gens 1 through 4, every Pokemon had a set amount of EXP they would always reward when it was defeated, and this amount was scaled based on what level the Pokemon was. It's incredibly simple. But Gen 5 decided to completely restructure the way that the EXP system worked, introducing what I like to call the EXP Curve. Basically, the way the curve works is that if you're lower level than the Pokemon you're fighting against, then you gain extra EXP for defeating it. But if you're over leveled, then you get less than you normally would. Like taxing the rich. Let's use a level 10 Patrat for example. Say this Patrat would normally award 100 EXP for defeating it, but if your level 5 Oshawott defeats this level 10 Patrat, then Oshawott gains 150 EXP instead. But let's say you came back with a level 20 Duat and defeated this same Patrat, then you would only gain 50 EXP. Disclaimer, these aren't the real numbers or the actual math, I'm just giving you an example in the simplest way possible. So just in case you were thinking, wait a minute, that would actually only gain 79.6 EXP for that Patrat, then I'm gonna need you to backspace in that comment and go outside for a few minutes because you need some vitamin D and less time on Bulbapedia. Basically, this was a pretty substantial change that made it easier to grind with weaker Pokemon, but prevented you from getting too overleveled to keep the game challenging. Or at least as challenging as a Pokemon game can be. I honestly think it's one of the best mechanic changes in Gen 5, but one that most of the community overlooks because it's more of a hidden mechanic that most fans without a sharp eye wouldn't even notice. It's also worth noting that most powerful Pokemon had their base experience yields increased in Gen 5 to make it so you still level up relatively fast in the later portion of the game. For example, the base EXP for defeating a Pidgeot used to be 172, but as of Gen 5 it's now 216 without taking the curve into account. This is where Gen 6 makes a pretty staggering mistake in my opinion. A lot of people argue that X and Y is only easy because of the EXP share, and if you turn it off then it's still a pretty tough grind. A lot of people also used to think the Earth was flat, too. The major mistake is that Gen 6 removed the EXP curve that Gen 5 implemented, but kept the higher amount of EXP rewarded that Gen 5 introduced. Meaning that you're just getting way more EXP than you normally should for defeating a Pokemon, especially in the late game. This is why even if you play through the entirety of Gen 6 without the EXP share on, there's a good chance that you'll still be overleveled, or at least on the same level as the NPCs. Of course, there are numerous other factors that go into this, such as how many Pokemon you used, or what kinds of Pokemon you use, since they all gain EXP at different rates. Like, if you used a team of 6 pseudo-legendary Pokemon and rotated them out with other powerful Pokemon that also level up relatively slowly, then yeah, you're gonna be underleveled. So I'm not trying to speak for everyone here. You really can't speak for everyone when like 15 million people bought the game. The point is, Gen 6's EXP system is still pretty flawed with or without the EXP share, so we'll have to use Gen 7 and 8 as more of a measuring stick for the overall argument. Basically, the EXP share works the same in these generations as in Gen 6, but there is one major difference, that being that the EXP curve from Gen 5 returned in Sun and Moon. So the EXP system in general is much better balanced. If you ask me, I think the Alola region games have the best EXP system in the series. Not only do you have the curve that keeps you on par with the other trainers, but if you do slip behind because you skipped a few optional battles, then you can just turn on the EXP share for a few minutes and make it all up. The Gen 5 games had a similar idea, giving you a lucky egg halfway through and adding Audino to almost every route in the game is an excellent Pokemon to grind against, but it's still a little slower of a process than it is in Alola. But the Switch games kinda ruined this balance by integrating the EXP share into the overall system. Now, I will say, I think Let's Go and Legends Arceus managed to get away with it because the emphasis of those games is more on catching Pokemon than battling trainers, so the EXP share doesn't really feel all that intrusive. In fact, they actually dramatically nerf the amount of EXP you get from trainer battles in Let's Go to account for this. If anything, I'd argue that the forced EXP share actually enhances the experience of those games, because otherwise grinding would be a complete nightmare. Sword and Shield is a bit of a mixed bag. It definitely has far fewer trainers in it than most Pokemon games, which leads me to believe that they balanced around the new EXP system, but I think the NPC level scaling could have been a bit better, not to mention how if you basically do anything more than the bare minimum, like Pokejobs, Pokemon Camp, or raid battles for EXP candies, you'll more than likely end up being overleveled. But where this problem is abundantly clear is in the Diamond and Pearl remakes. Since these games were so blindly faithful to the originals in every department except for the new EXP system and other quality of life upgrades, it is a struggle to not be overleveled. Not to mention that friendship/affection is fully baked into the game now, so you get another 20% buff to your Pokemon's EXP if they've been with you for more than an hour, basically. The EXP system in these remakes is a complete disaster, and this is only 4 years removed from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon with the best balanced EXP system in the series. And this all could have been circumvented if they just allowed for an optional EXP share again. I have always believed that the beauty of Pokemon stems from it being one of the most customizable RPG experiences. Unlike most RPGs where you pick your party based on a pool of like 5 to 10 members, in Pokemon you quite literally have hundreds of options per game. Now, it's easy to just say, well, if you don't like how overleveled you were in BDSP, why didn't you just use a crappy team with Lumineon, Wormadam, and Pachirisu? See, that's an easy pitfall of thinking to fall into. Because while it does address a difficulty problem, it severely limits the pool of usable Pokemon. Quite frankly, most people just want to use their favorites. And the fact of the matter is, most people's favorite Pokemon are leaning towards the extremely viable side, to put it lightly. If your favorite is Dunsparce though, at least know that you have my respect. But looping back around to customization, I think the EXP system falls into that. To be honest, I was perfectly fine with the Gen 6 revamp of the EXP Share. If you didn't like it, you could just turn it off. Doesn't fix the rest of Gen 6's EXP problems, but at least when the system was fixed in Sun and Moon, it led to a very enjoyable experience. If you couldn't tell, I'm just not a huge fan of developers telling you how to play the game, especially when it comes to a feature that used to be in the player's hands. I can understand wanting to streamline the experience in other aspects, which is something I think Game Freak has certainly improved on over time, but honestly, there was nothing wrong with the old EXP system. I don't believe that change was warranted. Again, in something like Let's Go and Legends Arceus, the forced EXP share isn't that obnoxious, because the entire concept of how you battle and gain EXP in those games is completely flipped on its head. But when you look at something like Sinnoh, which is traditionally seen as a more challenging region, and it's a remake which changes very little about the levels of other Pokemon, the idea of a forced EXP share is a lot less appealing. I know that other RPGs commonly have a similar EXP system baked in where all of your party members gain the same amount of experience, but again, I don't think Pokemon is entirely comparable to other RPGs. Pokemon is baby's first RPG. As much as I hate to admit it, but it is meant to be enjoyed by players of all ages with hundreds of options at your disposal, and Xenoblade Chronicles for the original Wii is hell in terms of difficulty. But the game is great, trust me. In a game like that, a more forgiving EXP system is vastly more appreciated. In Pokemon, it just feels patronizing. But I'm not one to complain without offering up a solution. As I said before, I believe Alola had the EXP system down perfectly, and although I know deep in my heart the new baked-in EXP share is likely a permanent change, I think Pokemon should heavily reconsider going back to that. Though I do think it's a bit primitive to have this whole system be controlled by an item of all things. It's like how to control the sound settings in Sword and Shield. You had to talk to a random NPC to get the earbuds key item. This was something that you could entirely miss, by the way. In the current day, we should be way past that. So scrap the EXP share item altogether and just have it be an option in the settings menu. That way you don't have to wait for an NPC to give it to you and have to worry about tracking it down your bag every time you want to fiddle with it. Just make it a simple option built into the game, because options are almost always a good thing. That's it. That's not a controversial take, right? It just feels like common sense. But maybe Game Freak knows better than I do. After all, they are the ones making the games with an awareness of what the future holds, and I'm just a guy in my basement talking about those games on the internet. I'm not claiming to be some genius of game design, I'm just here to offer my thoughts. For all we know, maybe Scarlet and Violet is going to build off the new template laid down by Legends Arceus and completely change the game going forward. Maybe things will be so much different that the whole EXP system will be an afterthought and we'll actually be enjoying the revamped system. Maybe that's just my optimistic side talking, but at this point, who knows? Shout out to my amazing channel members for always supporting my content, and thank you for leaving a like on this video and subscribing for future videos just like this one. See you guys next time!